Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Jun-sok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Young, good afternoon. Thank you for making time today.
Happy to be here.
Well, let's start on Wall Street, where it was another gain on Friday to end a pretty remarkable week. Again, inflation came in lower than expected for October, so that seemed to drive the continued rally. The S&P up more than 1% for the day and well over 5% for the week. What's the story in the global markets as we start a new week?
Okay, well, it was a very good week for the U.S. stock markets. Dow went up by 4.15% for the week. S&P by 5.9% for the week. It was the best week for S&P since June, and NASDAQ went up by a whopping 8.1%. And as you mentioned, this was because of the better-than-expected CPI inflation figures for October. The 12-month inflation was 7.7. That was below 7.9 expectations, and 0.4 monthly figures. That's the same as it was in September. But what really caught people's attention, I think, was the core inflation. Core inflation for 12 months was 6.3%. It was down from 6.6% in September. And monthly core inflation was 0.3%, down from 0.6%. So there is now a fairly strong feeling that inflation in the United States has hit the peak, and there is now perhaps an too optimistic expectation that perhaps the Fed will slow down the rate increases perhaps as soon as September. The Fed Watch is showing that about 80% of the people who were surveyed expect only a 25 basis point rise in December, whereas the Fed had been giving signals that it would raise the rates by 50 basis points. But we also should note that being too optimistic in the past has gotten the stock market as well as the Bank of Korea in trouble when they're trying to guess the Fed moves in the future. Now, the rise in the stock market was led by tech stocks. S&P tech stocks rose more than 10%. And it beat the bad news coming from the FTX cryptocurrency exchange, and some mistakes that were revealed by Meta, Facebook on their Metaverse technology, as well as problems brought about by Elon Musk taking over the Twitter, causing several problems there. But the optimism over the interest rates seemed to be beating all that pessimistic and embarrassing mistakes by these major tech companies. Year to date, Dow is down 7.76%, but it rose 12.35% in the past month. S&P for the year to date, it's down 16.75%. NASDAQ is down 28.48% year to date. Europe on Friday, DAX, CAC were up by 0.5 or 0.6 to 0.6%. FTSE was down by about 0.8%. Europe has just started to trade, and the expectation is that the market will be mixed. Asia on Friday, Nikkei, Shanghai, and Hang Seng all rose. Hang Seng especially rose by 7.7%. That is attributed to China trimming the quarantine period and increasing hopes, again, perhaps too optimistic, that China will end its zero-COVID policy. Chinese yuan had gained strength as well. Today, Nikkei has lost 1.06%, led by losses from SoftBank. It includes losses by FTX that the SoftBank made investments in, as well as the Vision Fund. Hang Seng is still doing fairly strong. It hasn't finished trading yet, but it's up about 1.7%. And Shanghai, it's not finished trading yet, but it's down by about 0.1%.
Well, Korean stocks today, too, taking their cue from Wall Street, started out quite a bit higher, but not in the end. Carmakers with a gain today, but chipmakers down, among others. The apparel manufacturer Pan Pacific up with a big gain to the daily limit today. Tell us about the domestic market, Professor.
Okay, well, the slight lackluster effect that we had today, maybe because we had Korean markets had a great week last week. For the entire week, last week, Kospi rose by 5.7%, Kosdaq rose by 5.4%, and the Korean won appreciated by 6.4%. And more than half of that change came on Friday. Now, there has been some problems in the bond markets. The yield for government bonds are falling, but the private bonds, the yields are rising. It seems to be that people are heading toward safety, so they're preferring government bonds over private bonds. So we are still having some turmoil in the private bond markets, private bill markets. The President Yoon and President Biden had a summit in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. President Biden agreed that Korean firms are making great contribution to the U.S. economy, and he said he will give consideration to Korean firms. Personally, I don't see how President Biden can help bypass these Korean companies get around the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, but still there seems to be some conversation there, and that's attributed to the rise in Hyundai and Kia Motors prices today. Today, Kospi is down 0.3%. It ended today at 2,474.64. Individuals and foreigners bought, institutions sold. Kosdaq is down 0.24%, ended today at 726.46. Individuals bought, institutions and foreigners sold, but foreigners only sold about 24 billion won's worth of stocks. So they're close to being neutral. Korean won is down 0.08%, and it ended today at 1325.30. But that comes on a very large appreciation that took place on Friday, where Korean won gained about 40.50, appreciated by 40.51. So the won is actually doing very well. For monthly changes, Kospi has risen by 11.5%, Kosdaq by about 7%, and Korean won has appreciated by 8%. For year-to-date, Korean Kospi, though, is still down by about 17%. Kosdaq is down by about 30%, and Korean won has depreciated by about 11.4%. But if you look at the year-to-date depreciation of other currencies as well, euro depreciated by about 10%. British pound has depreciated by about 15%. Japanese yen depreciated by about 21%, and Chinese yuan has depreciated by about 10.8%. So even though we had a very shaky time in September and October, now Korean won has depreciated, but it has not noticeably depreciated more than other major currencies. In that sense, Korean won may have gone back to a sort of a normal, stable state.
Right, a dramatic comeback in the past week or so. Professor, we'll have to leave it there for today, though, up against the clock today. Thank you, as always, for coming on the program. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you.